This session deals with the disaster recovery and crisis management in real life. So you'll get to see some of the experiences that the people on the panel have gone through. And recent disasters have shown more than ever the critical role of technology in ensuring public safety and continuity of government operations. The questions are we ready? Might not need to be answered today, tomorrow, or next month, but sooner or later, every organization will be tested, and there's rarely enough warning. This session unique format takes us through a variety of actual events that were both challenging and enlightening. My name is Dwight Bartolome, Chief of the Health Information Systems Office, and I'm the facilitator for this panel. On our panel members are Hong Fan, Principal Solution Architect, Oracle, Jim Lagunero, Emergency Management Coordinator, University of Hawaii, Colonel Reynold Hioki, Chief Information Officer, Department of Defense, and Doug Mayne, CEM, Vice Director of Civil Defense, State of Hawaii. Each member will give a 10 to 15 minutes presentation, and after the last presenter, we'll open the floor to discussion and questions. So first up is Hong Fan. Hong Fan has over 20 years of IT experience, consulting and delivery of IT, outsourcing, enterprise architecture, program project management, and managing data center infrastructure for both large and small organizations. As Principal Solution Architect for Oracle, Hong worked with a number of state and local agencies on disaster recovery architecture. Prior to joining Oracle, Hong was the Chief Technical Architect for HP, supporting County of San Diego. Hong was responsible for the enterprise architectural team and ensuring public safety and continuity of the county operations through innovative use of technology. Let me introduce Hong Fan.
Thank you, Dwight. I was first tasked to make sure that I wake you guys up because I got you guys after lunch. That's what my panel told me to do. In the past decades, as we've seen the different disaster that happens around the world, many countries and many cities are left devastated, right? Infrastructure, landmarks, stuff like that, that's hard for them to recover. And when we talk about this session today is really ask yourself, are you really ready? If a disaster happened today, right now, can you bring your infrastructure back up? Do you have the infrastructure in place? Can you cover? Do you have the process? Do you have the procedure thoroughly documented and readily available? And then I also learned a new quote today. Are you absolutely sure you have all that in place? From this morning keynote session. As I was looking through the transformation plan for the state of Hawaii, we went through the business transformation, technology transformation, transparency, and accountability. Really, it all wraps up to the mission statement for the state of Hawaii. We want a government that delivers the service people need anywhere and anytime. And with that, if you don't have a disaster plan, if you don't have a crisis management plan or business continuity plan, there's no way that you can meet the mission statement of having your system, your environment available anywhere, anytime. There's three things when we talk about disaster event is that you have crisis management. You need to have a process where you're going to be able to deal with the organization being able to come through from a crisis management perspective. Disaster recovery, right? The process in which you can restore your infrastructure, your system, your portal, all of those things that your constituent have access today. Do you have the ability to restore and get that back in place? And most importantly, business continuity. There are functions that you support today that are mission critical. So do you have all that steps and process in place to bring that back up? I was looking at numbers of disaster, and some of the ones that come to mind that we hear a lot is 911, Katrina, hurricane. But have you heard about the Great Blackout in Southeast California? I was actually there. I live in San Diego. I'm actually based in San Diego. That outage, it wasn't like, buildings falling down and things like that, but we were out for complete 12 hours. No electricity. Cell phone was completely busy. The cell tower you could not take the call and call anybody because the cell tower was busy. The only way that you could communicate was through SMS text. My kids was texting me, letting me know where they were. During a disaster crisis like this, you'll find out that really the most valuable resources that you need are your resources. And unfortunately, they're not going to be available. I was not available. Even through that power outage, the first thing I did was make sure that our data center was up. Next thing, hop in the car, drove home because I knew if I was stuck in traffic, I can't get to my kids in time to make sure they're safe. So as you're looking at disaster recovery, think of how you can put together an architecture, and I have to talk architecture because I'm enterprise architecture, that's really simplified, right? That you can, when you go through this exercise and you look at your new projects or new infrastructure, is think of how ways that you can architect it, innovate it so that you may have less dependency on some of the resources when you're in critical mode like this. A typical architecture today composed of different hardware, different resources. So you have server, storage, network. All of those various components require different type of skill set, different type of hardware, right? As you go through and you're looking at new project and everything, consider looking at simplifying it. Is there hardware, is there infrastructure in there that offer you, storage, network, server, everything in one, so that when the disaster happened, you don't need 10 resources to bring your system back up. All you need is 1 or 2. This is just an example of some of the infrastructure that I worked with. In fact, recently I worked with the county and city of San Francisco, who's kicking off their disaster recovery project. And we were looking to see how we could simplify that infrastructure, bring that up so that the only person that they need to fail over their ERP, which is mission critical, is the DBA and one apps person. And that's really, this is just an example architecture, but we leverage the Oracle Engineer system to do that. Really, you've heard it all today, virtualization, consolidation, that's what it is. In a disaster recovery, and I also do Tier 4 support when I was with the County of San Diego, and that is, you have 3 tiers of support. Tier 1, you get certain time to restore or service when an application is down. When it comes to my level, I only have about 60 minutes to get that system back online. When you're in crisis mode, you have a couple things that you're dealing with. You have a timeline that you have to meet. You have data that you have to restore, and there are data losses that you have to make sure that you have to recover at a certain point, because otherwise your data may not be right. The business people don't know how you got that data and where to pick up after a crisis. Make sure that you know that you set out your SLA, and in terms of how much data you can lose and how long your system can be down, okay? And architect the solution to meet those SLA. In fact, the city and county of San Francisco SLA was 2 hours. I made sure that architecture was met within an hour, because now I have an hour buffer in a disaster recovery. This is an example of a failure disaster recovery that we worked on for an ERP project. Really, if you take a step back and you look at it, right? In all of the environment that we support, we always have a production environment, and we have test dev and a disaster recovery. Leverage your test dev environment, right? You've already spent the money, you've already invested in that architecture. Find a way to set it up so that maybe it's active, but the only time that it's activated is during disaster recovery, so that you're not having to go back out there, spend additional money on additional hardware for disaster recovery. In this sample architecture that you see here, I have, this is a PeopleSoft application for ERP, and it's completely set up, architected with complete redundancy from the web tier, the apps tier, to the database tier. But the key thing is I meet the SLA, and I only need 1 or 2 resources to bring the system up when it needs to fail over. In summary, simplify your architecture. I can't stress how much that is, that important that is. Reference technical architecture that's available. In Oracle, any application that you run with Oracle, we always have what we call maximum availability architecture that you can reference. Use them as a guide. Develop a vision architecture. Know what your end state is. Sometimes when we're kicking off a disaster project, it's about this big, right? And it takes about this much money to do the work. But you can look at a project that you're doing right now, such as the county. We took the ERP project, and we actually used that as a platform to architect it so that the next application that came aboard can leverage that same architecture as well. So kind of develop that vision architecture that you would use. Document your process and your procedure. During the outage I had at County of San Diego, because we were completely out of power, the procedure and the process were on some of the people's desks. And we had to shut it down because even though we have UPS, right, because the amount of time of outage that we had, we were uncertain how long that, we knew how long the UPS lasts, but we have a lot of loads, right? Besides the server room, you also have desktops and stuff outside. We actually had to go and shut down everyone's workstation because we want to make sure the data center has all the UPS it's needs. But there were process and procedure on there that we needed, right? So think about that, making sure that not only you have it documented and published, you make sure that it's readily available. And it's not written for that person that's doing the execution of that process. It should be written for anyone that can follow that step and bring your system up, because your resources may not be available during the crisis. Okay? All right, now I turn this over. Thank you.
Thank you, Hong. Next presenter is Jim Lagunero. Jim is a University of Hawaii of Manoa Emergency Management Coordinator and the University of Hawaii Systems Civil Defense Coordinator, a 26-year military veteran and former U.S. Marine Gunnery Sergeant. Jim served over 16 years with the 4th Force Reconnaissance Company, and since 1999 has been mobilized to active military duty 5 times, serving in Afghanistan, Iraq, Panama, and on the U.S.-Mexican border. He's also served with the Hawaii Army's National Guard 29th Brigade Special Troops Battalion and is a lecturer with the National Disaster Preparedness Training Center and a DHS Certified Incident Command System, NIMS, and FEMA Certified Instructor. Let's welcome Jim Lagunero.
You know, for myself, when I found about this particular event, I was going, great, this is the panel I want to see. I didn't know that I was going to be on the panel. And it's kind of funny also, too, because when I think about it also, too, because earlier this year, I kind of nominated Sonny to be a speaker at this other event I was at, so I guess payback. All right, so moving on. When I found out about this, okay, I was like, great. You know, Doug just gives a class on Prezi and how to use different technology to how to do a presentation. So I started doing that, just like how Sonny has been, you know, innovative, forward-thinking, trying to think outside of the box. But then we get a template saying, all right, this is how we want your slides. Use PowerPoint. But that's the thing also about IT. We got to speak the same language. So I caved. All right, so with regards to my particular portion on emergency management, what does it touch? It touches all of the different areas: business, technology, and governance. For me, this is what really happened. In October 2004, we had a flood that devastated the UH Manoa campus. This flood occurred in late evening hours. If you can see the clock and you can see the mud on the clock, basically the water came that high. It came so high so quickly that the students that were studying inside the library had to break out a window to get out. A researcher that was trying to get back to her office to save her data and save her information that she'd been working on for the longest time almost lost her life. And so we sustained almost $100 million in damages, loss of priceless research and artifacts. This is a picture basically of some of the cars near the Woodlawn Stream that ended up being parked right in the stream itself. And you see the guy in the back there doing maintenance on computers. That's not the way you do maintenance on your computers, with a water hose. So how do we do it? So what we did was basically, we need to find out what information do we need, and where can we get that information? Fortunately for myself, I was associated with another entity, another group called the Association of College and University Telecom Administrators. And one of the things that they did was they got together to revise a guide system, a checklist that you can go online, download, and you can get it for free. What do I need to do to prepare for my IT portions and everything else? And so this is a quick snapshot of one of those pages, a lot of different checklist information. Who does it? When do they do it? Try to find the information. Try to find that business continuity planner or that emergency manager that's going to be able to find you these checklists so you can develop and create your own plans. And also what you need to do is you need to monitor the threat. What is the threat? This right here is a snapshot of what occurred about 2 weeks ago when the Manoa Stream almost crested at 10 feet, potentially doing the same thing that may have occurred back in 2004. While the effects were not as great, via technology, I got an alert saying, hey, the stream's coming up. Take precautions. And because of the work that I've been doing with the local responders and providers, they're also being informed about it. Hey, we're going to do eyes on. We're going to check. Is the stream actually blocked? And so when I went up to the stream at 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at midnight, I already saw local city responders already there, eyes on, trying to gauging it. So the system is working, but you need to find those partners and you need to continue to monitor the threat. And you also need to protect what you have. So this is one of the things that we did to protect what we have. What we did is we also, next month, we will be opening, or our grand opening for our new IT center, a disaster-hardened 8,000 square foot data center for enterprise, storage, and communications, and a place where we can create a situation room so we can monitor our things. When they were first planning and designing this, I asked them 2 questions. Where is the emergency generators? And where's your front door? Because the threat still exists. Currently right now, the generators on the roof, the front door on the south side. The threat is coming from the north side. So the idea is you need to have the right people in the room to address your concerns. And you need to see out what else people are doing elsewhere. Try to find those answers. All right, so in summary, you need to identify the risks, do your hazard identification, conduct those assessments, plan, and you need to also continue to develop and test your plans and find the right people so that you can really test it to your limits. And also, let's not forget the past. But for the library that was also damaged, this is one of the, I guess you could say, concepts that we thought about briefly so that our library is not damaged again. We're open for business. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Next up is Colonel Reynold Hioki. As a state Hawaii Department of Defense Chief Information Officer and Hawaii National Guard Director of Command, Control, Communications, and Computers, Colonel Hioki advises the Adjutant General of the state of Hawaii in developing departmental cyberspace policies and strategic plans for both day-to-day and emergency operations. He is responsible for all departments' cyberspace operations and implementation of the emergency communications section of the Hawaii National Guard Emergency Response Plan. He works closely with the National Guard Bureau, State Civil Defense, County Emergency Management Organizations, and other emergency response agencies. May I present Colonel Reynold Hioki. F5. Oh,
Okay, Good afternoon, everyone. Before I get started, I want to do a quick probe of the audience. So real quick, when I say T1, how many of you know what that really means? Excellent. Okay, good, good. When I say terabyte, how many of you guys understand that? Okay, okay, pretty good. Real quick, this is going to not really be anything that's from an experience perspective, what we just saw, but it's really a technology tactical presentation. Specifically, let you give you my background. I mean, before that, what I want people to take from this is maybe something taking back to your division, your department, your sections that you can actually maybe implement shortly for some type of technology gap. Real quick, what I'm going to talk about is emergency communications and specifically for state operations. My background, back in 2005, I was assigned as the J6, which the military effectively knows as the communications guy for the organization. For the Hawaii National Guard, the J6 really is emergency communications. We have really nothing to do going to war. Our mission is here in the state, specifically for disaster response, okay? So just a little plug on emergency communication. 2005, I was appointed by Major General Lee, the adjutant at the time. Really didn't know what I was doing, got there. What happened in 2005? Anyone have any idea? So I got there in August. Anyone remember? Katrina, right? So what happened is the first thing I had to do was we had to respond to Katrina. 1 month after it started, we actually pushed a package to Katrina. And of the whole Hawaii National Guard, the package we pushed was our emergency communication package. And that kind of started the role for the next 8 years, my mission as the J6. Now, what happened during Katrina? I heard a lot of things because it was a Guard response. I got to talk to my counterpart in Louisiana, the J6 there. It was really bad. They were not prepared. They were overwhelmed, and you saw it in the news. Interestingly, looking back in all the other states as we helped out, we were probably not that good also. Okay, so I'm not poking the eyes of the Louisiana, but also we were not that good back there in 2005. We've come a long way since then, and coupled with that, there's some really neat technologies I wanted to kind of share today. If you're in a position where you're doing emergency communications for your organization. So real quick, what is emergency communications? I got it right there. Means and methods for transmitting and receiving information necessary for a successful incident management when needed and as authorized. The key point there is incident management. What that really means is responding to something as simple as a brush fire down the street to a catastrophic Cat 4, Cat 5 Katrina-like incident. Okay? So while we're on the Katrina topic, got this out of a document that Dr. Miller provided from National Defense University. I'll give you some moment to look at that. You see some numbers in there, what went down and so forth. Now with that said, let's look at the red portion. I actually got to meet Paul McHale, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Homeland Defense. He came out here probably within the year after Katrina. But he states there, right there, the magnitude of the storm was such that the local communication system wasn't simply degraded. It was, at least for a period of time, destroyed, okay? So what does that really mean? And you look at the numbers of systems that went down. It can happen anywhere. Of course, everyone remembers Hioki, and those of us that that play in this circle think, you know, it's coming here in Hawaii shortly. But the point on this is, what would happen if our communications in the state was destroyed? Okay, not degraded, not severely impacted, but destroyed. Okay, emergency communication, to me, this is what it is. And I'm talking emergency communication really not for the whole state, but again, at your department, your division, your section, or wherever you came from, okay? It has to be highly survivable and reliable. It has to work. This is your emergency communications, okay? Now we're thinking in the terms of the infrastructure, the comm is destroyed, okay? It's gotta be simple and easy to deploy because you can't work it, you're not gonna be able to use it. It's gotta be pretty much plug and play. It's gotta be cost effective because you're using it, you have it now and you have no money to pay for it right now. There is no emergency, okay? And if you think about why comms goes down, it's because the comm that we have, this terrestrial comm, is dependent on a whole bunch of things. If you look at ground wires or wires on the telephone pole, you know, if the wind blows it down or the ground gets flooded, it is gone. If the power goes off, it is gone, okay? So it's very fragile, the terrestrial versus satellite. Okay, what emergency comm is not? It is not our day-to-day comms, okay? It is not your telephone, your cell phone, your oceanic service, or those type of things. That's day-to-day. That will be gone during emergency. Okay, emergency communications, what does it do? It supports catastrophic Cat 4, Cat 5, Katrina type incidents where everything is destroyed, okay? Local communication infrastructure is gone. It has collapsed, okay? Emergency comm at this point will provide the C2 command and control for our decision makers responding to the event, okay? It traverses support for all emergency functions out there, and it'll provide support for local all the way down to NGOs and everybody in between. Basically, emergency communications during the emergency is going to get you through and out of the emergency. Okay? So again, that's emergency communication. So what I wanted to kind of go, the next step here is kind of look at some technologies that are out there. These technologies to me are really game-changing over the last couple of years. These did not exist. And if you know about it, I probably see people with smiles on their face because they know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you don't, this is some really neat stuff that you could take back shortly, implement, fill the gaps that you have for not that much. So the first one is the Inmarsat vGAN terminal. Probably the most reliable system you can get for communication among us IT guys is satellite-based communication. Okay? If you got a cell phone that relies on a cell tower and trunks and all the way back to the central office and all of that, probably going to be down. So satellite is going to be the way you want to go. This system is deployable worldwide. It can you can use this pretty much anywhere in the world. What it provides is commercial satellite, internet data, and phone service. So you can surf the internet, you can make phone calls. It costs about $3,000 to $5,000 for one of these boxes, and there's different categories. It costs about $30 a month to keep it alive. And again, back to the megabyte. If you transfer 1 megabyte with this system, it's $5. 1 minute is $1 to talk on it. Setup time is really several minutes, no more than 5. Very easy to do. Pizza box size, and those are the numbers. Not quite the high speed, but good enough if you're out there and you have no comms. Okay? Bottom line, it's relatively expensive, $3,000 to $5,000. Relatively expensive to use also, but you can use this anywhere pretty much in the world. So those that understand satellite maps, bottom line, if it's colored, blue, green, or brown, you're covered. You have service. Just point it to the satellite and it goes. Okay? So again, relatively expensive, but you have worldwide coverage. You can take it, put it in your backpack, and go to where you need to go. Another satellite system I want to talk about is Exceed. This is relatively new. Within the last year, we saw this come up. Satellite-based, it is fixed. It's basically like DirecTV or Dish Network kind of dish. Commercial satellite, internet, phone, non-recurring costs. It's about less than $1,000 to have one of these hooked up with the equipment. The monthly recurring cost, $50 a month. Gigabytes. You can transfer 10 gigabytes per month. That is your limit, and it's $10 for each additional gigabyte, which is a lot of data. Setup time, not really applicable because it is fixed. Someone comes out and sets it up for you. The dish size is 30 inches. And here's what's kind of astounding is, again, the quiz in the beginning of this, 12 megabits per second coming down, 3 megabits per second going up. This is faster than what you normally have at home. Okay? Okay, so you take that technology and you couple it with some type of voice over IP service on the internet. And so you probably have seen these, Uma's company, Vonage, Broadband. You get these phones. These are the phones that you connect right into your port at your router at home or to the satellite system. It comes right up. Costs about $100 to $200 for one of these devices. Monthly recurring costs about $20 a month. Setup time, really, you're plugging it into your router. Normal handset. and you got phone service. You know, if you call in the United States, pretty much it's no cost. If you go other countries, then you have some incurred costs, but really relatively cheap stuff. Okay, so far so good. So what do we do with this? And that is this. Again, right there you got your emergency communications kit. I put a BGAN terminal there, but it could have been an Exceed. You got your voice, your data, and really if you wanted to, but probably not required, if you wanted VTC, video capability, you could put in some type of software-based codec and have video. That really is the foundation to get emergency communications, because after that, you're going to have to figure out who you're going to talk to, how you're going to coordinate things. That's the next level. So that's emergency management software. In the state, we use WebEOC. You need some type of common operational picture collaboration system. We use Defense Connect Online in the National Guard. HRSS is a SharePoint file sharing kind of system. And then Mercy is a damage assessment, so you can figure out what's damaged out there, as well as Jeep, which is an aerial system that we use in the department. So this would ride over your emergency communications that you set up with, which is in the square there. Okay, so in summary, again, emergency communications is very critical. Again, in the Guard, my #1 mission is emergency communications. As the department CIO, my secondary mission is IT, which is completely backwards probably with all my counterparts in the state, different departments. In fact, my thought is a lot of my counterparts, their primary, and they're very busy, is IT, and probably don't spend as much as they need in the emergency communication side. Unfortunately, if you have an emergency and everything goes down, it's really too late to start figuring this stuff out. You got to have a plan. You have to have equipment ahead of time, prepped, ready to go. Okay, so emergency is important. Again, it's game-changing. The stuff I just presented, the BGAN, the Exceed, and the IP phones, highly survivable, reliable, very cost-effective, probably 1/10 the price what it was several years ago, and really simple to deploy. And those of us that kind of operate in the emergency communication, disaster recovery kind of circles, we always say this, you probably heard this, it's not really a matter of if the next event occurs, it's really when. And we're probably due for one coming shortly. So with that, be prepared. I think that is all I have. Thank you very much, and be back to you.
Thank you, Colonel. Next up is Doug Mayne. Doug Mayne was appointed to the position of Vice Director of Civil Defense for the state of Hawaii on March 2012. Doug oversees the day-to-day operations of Hawaii State Civil Defense and is responsible for coordinating the state's disaster preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation activities. State Civil Defense consists of 65 employees organized into 6 main branches, a warning system of 476 sirens in place statewide, and has a combined state-federal budget of over $10 million per year. Since his arrival, Doug has overseen 2 disasters, formed the State Mass Care Council, and authorized 2 major pieces of legislation. Additionally, he has working community level and supporting catastrophic planning efforts at the local, state, and federal level. From 2008 to 2012, Doug served as a federal coordination officer for the Federal Emergency Management Agency. As the FCO, Doug has led disaster efforts for 7 presidential declared disasters, including flooding, ice storms, and tornadoes. Prior to his work with FEMA, Doug completed a 22-year career with the Army National Guard. May I present Doug, Mayor.
Thank you very much. All right, is everybody awake? Yeah? It's cold enough in here, right? Hopefully you can hear me over my teeth chattering. That's the goal today. So we were here to talk about disaster recovery and crisis management in real life. I'm sure you showed up expecting a lot of great examples, personal experiences with disasters. we got one from Hong, really haven't gotten, we got a little bit from Jimmy, and quite frankly, you're not going to get any from me. So sorry about that. If you're interested in, during the question part about breakdown in communications and ways we can help resolve that or things we've seen in the past, please ask questions then. But in my current role, my biggest concern, I've got two concerns. Well, my biggest concern is how do we take care of people, mass care and mass feeding. But besides that, my real concerns are how do we warn people? How do we get the warning out there? What systems do we have? How redundant are they? How effective are they? And then how do we inform people as the disaster is going on? As we enter into the response phase and in the recovery phase, how do we keep people informed? And what are the different systems that we use? And what are some of the issues as we're moving forward in this era of technology? So let's talk about warning systems. We have a lot of different warning systems within the state. I think in my BIOS 476, I think I'm anticipating a little bit some siren building we're doing as we go through. We currently have 332 outdoor sirens in our outdoor siren warning system. We also have TV and radio emergency alert system, the EAS system that you're used to hearing or seeing. We have wireless emergency alerts, which is a new system that's coming out. And we have a number of opt-in notification systems that the counties use. And for information, you can see the typical ones that we have. But let's talk a little bit more about warning and some of the issues that I see with the warning systems that we have. Quite frankly, our primary warning system is our outdoor warning sirens. Again, it's a statewide system, 332 state-owned sirens. There's also another about 25 sirens that are owned by the military, and typically on the bases. And these, who's heard a warning siren go off? All right, who has heard the warning siren go off and wished that you hadn't because it really bothers you? A lot, right? Warning siren, these things, it's relatively old technology. It's been around literally since World War I. We've done some upgrades. This is one of our older sirens that are still in use, and we're going through an upgrade program right now. But there's a real problem with warning sirens, and that's this. What happens if you're in your house and your air conditioning's on, or you're in your condo downtown and air conditioning's on? There's a large chance that you're not going to hear the siren. Because these sirens, this system was designed when most of us here in Hawaii lived outdoors, had lanais, had the windows and doors open, but that's just not the way we live anymore. So the efficiency, the effectiveness of the siren warning systems is actually going down as we move forward. Okay, another system, the EAS system, TV and radio. How many have sat there and seen either our monthly tests or about a year ago saw the EAS warnings for the tsunami, right? Come across the radio and TV. Very effective if you're watching radio, or if you're watching radio, that's a real trick. If you're watching TV or if you're listening to the radio, but most of us listen to the radio in the car, and I don't spend that much time in my car anymore. But there's an interesting phenomenon that's coming on now with radio and TV. And that's cable subscription, either through Sirius, through the satellite radio systems, or Netflix or Amazon. I've figured out that since we moved here to Hawaii about 18 months ago, network TV, virtually the only time we watch network TV is when football is on. And that's pro football. So Sunday, if something happens on a Sunday afternoon, or Monday afternoon here, or Thursday afternoon, I might see it. Other than that, I ain't going to see it. So that's an issue now with our emergency alert systems in our modern era. And this is probably just going to get worse with proliferation of non-commercial, well, it's commercial, but non-traditional TV and radio stations. We have a new product coming out. It's out now, called Wireless Emergency Alerts. Who has received a wireless emergency alert through your cell phone? Okay, a few people. It's localized. It's meant to go out to the area where the alert is for. So if there's a flash flood warning for Hawaii Kai, those cell towers that broadcast into Hawaii Kai will send the message out. Quite frankly, they're working through some of the issues on this right now. Each cell carrier has instituted a little bit differently, but it's still pretty effective. But especially here in Hawaii and in other rural areas, there's a problem. Not everybody's got cell coverage where they live or where they're playing. There's also a number of systems that our counties use. The City and County of Honolulu uses Nixle. Who's heard of Nixle, first of all? Okay, we've got one or two. Who's signed up for Nixle? Okay. Nixle is actually a system that's used across the country to push notifications. This is a pretty good system. I really recommend, if you live here on Oahu, that you go to DEM's website or to the Nixle website, quite frankly, and sign up for it. It's a free system, and it pushes not only weather alerts and other disaster information, but here they also send road closures, highway outages, other things that are happening in your area from police, fire, and from the Department of Emergency Management. The nice thing about Nixle is if you're traveling around the country, you can sign up. You can look and see if the place that you're going also uses Nixle, and you can sign up for it and receive local alerts there. So it's a very portable system, which is nice. The other counties use Blackboard Connect, basically. Now, you see here that Nixle is a text and email system. So if the cell towers get plugged up, you still might get the text messages. If you happen to be connected to a landline, you can certainly still get the email messages. Blackboard Connect, Blackboard Connect is a system that actually does, it's almost a reverse 911 system where you can get phone calls, you get an automated message, and that can go to voicemail, or it can go to your landline. You can enter more than one phone number. So you can get a voice message, or you can get a text, or you can get an email. So let's talk about warning by the numbers. So this is, we just did a poll of our counties to look at who's getting what, how effective their systems are. So you look at Kauai. Kauai is the big winner. This is the number of people they have subscribed to their Blackboard Connect system. So this is a percentage of the population and these are all approximates, that are still subscribed to their system. So these 42% of the population will receive a text message, an email, or a voicemail if there's information that needs to be pushed out. Next is the Big Island. There's their numbers. So 28% of the population are covered through their Blackboard Connect system. Oahu, City and County of Honolulu, 3%. That's through Nixle, 3%. All right, pretty low, right? All right, for the county of Maui, 1776, I thought that was a pretty symbolic number. Again, 3%. So here's the question. Okay, so statewide, I didn't get to the question yet. I should have read my slides a little bit more. So statewide, about 8% of the population. Again, you saw the percentages across the board. So we have 42% on Kauai versus 3% on Maui and Oahu. What do you think the difference is? Any ideas? The two largest counties, Hawaii and Kauai, used opt-out systems. When they bought their Blackboard Connect systems, they also bought and had put into those systems the phone book. And that's where they started. And then they told people they could opt out if they wanted to opt out. Very few people opted out. And then over the time since they've loaded it, stuff has changed enough where they've kind of dropped down to this. The 3% systems are opt-in systems. So people have to take the time, take the effort to sign up for the system. And oftentimes there's some hesitation to do it. There's just plain inertia. As a matter of fact, I was talking with the new civil defense administrator for Kauai, and her point was inertia is the biggest thing. If you put people in and say you can sign, you can drop out, you'll get some people that will drop out, but most people will stay in. Or you can just tell people if you want to opt in, you can, and again, you get 3% opt-in. Some of that is just understanding and knowledge, understanding what's out there. The other is just sheer inertia. We also have our outdoor siren warning system. approximately 78.5% of the population of Hawaii is covered by a buffer zone around a siren. Now there's a couple of assumptions here. One is that everybody that's within the buffer zone can actually hear the siren, which we know is not true. And the other assumption is that all the sirens are working, which is also not true because at any given time about 10% of our sirens are out. But if you look at the 8% of people that are receiving notifications through some type of through some type of alert notification system, email, text, or phone message, and the 78% of the people that live within siren buffer zones, the sirens still seem to reach more people than the technological solutions we have. And quite frankly, I'm concerned about that because sirens are expensive. We're spending about $24 million over an 8-year period to upgrade our sirens, to put new sirens in, and to put new communications packages on them, to get them off of radio and get them to satellite and cell phone systems. What we don't know is what our annual upkeep is going to be for our 476 sirens, which is what we're eventually going for, how much it's going to cost us to keep those up over the coming years, and how long do we perpetuate this probably $1 million a year maintenance and upkeep for these sirens. And they're intensive. I've got 6 guys, I've got 6 employees, they do all happen to be guys, that their job is to help maintain the siren system around the state. That's 6 employees that if we get to another different technological solution could be used for something else. Okay, so that's my issue with the warning systems. Where are we at? Where are we going? How do we leverage technology? And how do we get people to embrace the technological solutions? The other issue I have is how do we get information to people? How do we don't ever control information. You can't control something that you don't own the process for. But how do we ensure that information that's as accurate as possible gets out there? We find, and we deal with inaccuracies that are out there. And this also, we have a technological revolution going on. You know, we have the classic triumvirate of print and radio and TV. And we have all these things here in the island. In addition to that, you know, interestingly enough, we have the Jon Stewart phenomenon where you have the traditional news programs, but then you have comedians who are being seen as sources of news. How do you deal with that? You also have social media, Facebook and Twitter. You have YouTube channels that provide instant data just about, oftentimes very shortly thereafter, images, comment, and news stories that are out there that are instantly hitting the waves, and you don't know whether they're true or not. You don't know the source. How do you deal with that? You have the capability of Skyping. The last time we had news crews in our emergency operations center at Berkheimer, we had 2 people that were doing it via Skype. They didn't have the big cameras. They didn't have the backup crew with them. There was them, a laptop, a little laptop camera, and that was it. And that's how they were sending their news out. And finally, you have the bloggers. What do you do with bloggers that have no official standing but are putting out their blogs and might have great information that they're putting out or might be putting out misinformation? So let's look at that a little bit. You know, the way that we deal with the traditional news media is the way that we've always dealt with the traditional news media. It's very simple. We have steps in place. We have a news conference, either daily, every couple of hours. We call them all in, and we brief them. You know, that's a picture from 1963. You know, that could have been last week at Berkheimer, you know, or last month at Berkheimer, or in August at Berkheimer during Flossie. The crews come in, everyone stands around, answers questions. But what do you do about social media? Some of these you get through the traditional press conference. You get people there that will also tweet and will also hit on Facebook. But there's a lot of people that don't. So how do you get to them? Your PIO. Your PIO, our PIO spends a lot of time sending stuff to Twitter, updating Facebook pages, dealing with bloggers, and even posting videos to YouTube when we can do it. The problem I have is I've got 2 people in my public information shop. They start getting phone calls as soon as tsunami warnings start going out from the National Weather Service, people start calling them. Even before I get a chance to call them and tell them what's going on, they start getting phone calls because everybody is so tied in. So what do they start doing? They start immediately putting tweets out because that's what they can do from home. Or they return the phone calls to the traditional news media. But the PIOs are critical in making sure that they reach out to these different channels. The problem is there's a lot of them. There's a lot of people that are blogging. There's a lot of people that are posting YouTube. And how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the misinformation that's out there? And I'm going way over. How do you deal with the misinformation that's out there being promulgated? Who knows Bartolome? Bite Marks Cafe on Wednesday nights. Bartolome is a guy that has formed our virtual operations support team. And this is a group of volunteers that come together. We activate them, and they put together a group of people to monitor social media, and that's what they do. They reach out, and they're monitoring all this different social media, and they're pulling information back to see what do they think is real, what is misinformation, and they feed that information to the PIO. So that the My Public Information staff knows that there's rumors out there, there's mistruths out there, and then they can react out to the different channels and get the right information out there. What do you do about Jon Stewart? All you can do is go on the show and have fun because that's about all there is. So what's next? Technology changes very rapidly. It's difficult for me to spend millions and millions of dollars for any technological solution because 2 years from now, it might be 1/10 the cost, or it might be something completely different. Who would have thought that Facebook and Twitter would be a primary concern of my public information officer 5 years ago? 5 years ago, they weren't even on the horizon. People used it, but it isn't the information tool that it has become now. We also have new applications coming out that use geofencing. So you can establish borders for alerts. We just had a vendor come in and talk to us about an alert system where you can literally draw the boundary around a building, and you can send an alert just to people within that building. So that if there's danger within that building, you can send an alert to people, and it only affects those people that are within the building, and other people don't know about the issue. How do you apply that in the emergency management realm? How do you apply that in your realm? Lack of cell coverage. What do we do about that? Hawaii, there's many places in Hawaii where there's no cell coverage. How do we either infill the coverage, or how do we leverage technology through mesh networks or something else? And what's coming down the road to help us backfill those areas where there's no cell coverage? $24 million in siren retrofits. Is that something that we want to continue investing in over the coming decades? It's a question. I don't know. I don't know where technology goes. And this is where this is where I hope to get help from Sunny, from OIMT, from the smart people in this audience, and from whoever else wants to be a part of the solution to alerting, warning, and information. And then opt-in versus opt-out systems. We saw the differences. We see where inertia takes us. And 3% versus 42% is, that's a big chunk. I mean, that's a lot of people different. So we're going to do questions later, but that's what I've got. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Doug. I want to thank the panel for a lot of the information that's shared. And now opening it up to the audience as far as questions. Does anybody want to ask any questions? Go ahead.
You know, it's really hard to answer the question why people give up on landline, but I can give you the answer that we want new technology, right? We want the mobile devices. So we get those things that become crucial when you get caught in that situation. And that was the situation that we were caught in. You had no power. You didn't get news or radio with what's happening around you because there's no TV, right? You couldn't get any of that. The news that you got of what's happening around you is really texting someone outside of the area to get it. So you're right. That's one thing that you do have to make sure that you have some form of communication outside of all the new devices that we get.
Thank you.
I think the point Hong makes a really good point, which is, the statement is that cell phones go down during a disaster, and that's not quite true. What happens is the cell phone networks get overused, and so calls don't go through. A lot of times the cell systems are still up, but you can't make a phone call. What you can do is text. And so what I recommend on everybody, I know that everybody in here has an emergency plan. I just know that in my heart. As you review your emergency plan next time you pull it out, or as you develop it, ensure that your contact plan, because it asks you to put together a contact plan for your family, just make it a texting plan, unless you do think you're going to have landlines. We don't own a landline. I mean, I could answer your question on a personal basis of why I don't have a landline. But please, texting typically works. Cell phone, do we got anyone from the cell industry here? Cell towers specifically. Cell towers here are built to withstand wind speeds of up to like 158, something like that. So the towers are typically, nowadays, unlike Hurricane Katrina, cell towers are typically still standing. Most of them have generator backup, so they're still operating until gas runs out, which is a different issue. So they'll still work. So texting typically works. Sorry, took a lot of time to answer a simple question.
Thank you.
Just remember, when in your crisis mode, everybody pick up the phone and call. So the cell tower gets very busy. You just have to keep that in mind.
If I could also add one thing. When we had one of the incidents recently, everyone was kind of concerned about, I don't have a phone book anymore. And that's where they have evacuation plans. Well, you should already know if you have to evacuate. Don't wait till the event. You should know this stuff.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Anywhere you go in the world, really, a great communication backbone are the ham operators that utilize the old-fashioned high frequency. A lot of these guys have generators and so forth. And they're the ones that can relay a lot of the information to and from the outside world. Let's say if we get inundated and cell towers or whatever, the infrastructure just totally falls flat on its rear end. So, it's always good to maintain a partnership with these ham guys, not to mention all of us blue suiters here. We tend to be rather well versed in high-frequency communications, as well as VHF, UHF. Yes, they are susceptible to power outages, and the gas runs out of the generator, and the UPS battery run out, and so forth. Then you're kind of stuck. But there's a lot of contingencies that can be looked at. It's actually going back to the future.
One of my contingency plan after going through that exercise, my neighbor has solar panel. So that's where I'm heading when the next power outage is going down.
He has a transceiver, too.
Exactly.
Any other questions out in the audience? We still have some time till about another maybe 5 minutes.
Hey, Dwight, I just wanted to,
Go ahead.
just a comment about the HF. I'm not sure where that was heading towards, but just an awareness. I know State Civil Defense is highly engaged with the ham operators and they do participate, and I think they do very well. It's a big part of the operations. In the National Guard, we do stand up HF radio networks throughout the state. So the National Guard, I'm sorry? It's just our own system. I mean, we have armories and facilities throughout the state, including all the major islands except we don't have anything on Lanai, but we do have something on Molokai. So we do connect with them.
So, how many in here are government? All right, how many are private sector? Okay. So, my question for the government sector is, number one, do you know what you're supposed to do during a disaster? Do you know what you're supposed to do when your department director or the governor says, non-emergency staff, go home, you're on leave? Or emergency staff, stay? Do you know what your status is? Do you have your individual plan for your family? How are they going to, if you have to stay at work, how are you going to ensure that they're safe? Do they know where to go? If a hurricane is coming, do you live in a single wall or double wall home? Do you know if you're supposed to go to a hurricane, if it's safer to go to a hurricane shelter or to stay in the home that you're in? Do you understand the requirements for retrofit for your home if you're in a single wall home, and where to go for that? There's a lot of great information out there for individual preparedness. If you go to the DEM website, you go to your county website, you come to the State Civil Defense website, you go to ready.gov, go to University of Hawaii Sea Grant and download their Hawaii's Homeowner Handbook for Preparing for Natural Hazards. It's a great book. You should know those things. You should know what your children's school is going to do during a tsunami evacuation. Where are they going to go if they're in a tsunami zone? And if your role is to be an emergency worker and to go to work and to keep those critical functions going, what's the plan for your family? What I've told my workers, what I've told the people in state civil defense, who's been to Berkheimer? Anyone been to Berkheimer? Okay, we got 8 feet of concrete and then another 6 feet of dirt on top of that inside Diamond Head Crater. It's about the safest place you can be. I've told my staff, bring everybody to work. Bring your kids, bring your family, bring your cats and dogs, because that way, we've got plenty of tunnels we can put them in while the hurricane's here, but then we know they're safe. And my staff is going to be there no matter what. And your staff is not going to be effective unless they know their family's taken care of. So find out, ask your supervisor, or if you are a supervisor, ask yourself, what's our plan for our employees? What's our continuity plan? Because it's critical. It's going to be tough. It's going to be really hard after a hurricane. It's going to be hard after a tsunami to take care of all the people of the state that we need to take care of, plus take care of our families.
Can I share with that also too? Is that if you have a plan, have you tested it? Have you done it without mainline power? Have you considered what about the loss of water, your hygiene plan? And how long can you sustain that? So, for people that are responsible for things, you got to protect it, and you got to be prepared for the worst. You got to have those redundant means of communication, and you also have to know, if you don't have that, where can I go? Like the resources that Doug was mentioning, or considering with regards to that BGAN device that Reynold was talking about, or like how Hong was talking about, other means to access that information. So you need to test those things. And one of the best ways you can do that is to get a business continuity professional or an emergency planner to assist you with those processes.
In my scenario, in my power outage, there was no warning. There was no communication. The power line went out. Next thing I hear is my team across the hall saying, power just down in Chula Vista, Hong. What do we do? Okay, this time you just have to you kind of have to plan as you go. We know we have a disaster plan, but at the time my data center wasn't impacted because it's in Plano, Tulsa. But everybody that was local was being impacted, the local resources. And so the first thing I did was, you actually have to react as you go. Kind of state what your end vision is, but react and kind of time it out as quickly as you can. I told my team, check your system, shut it down, go home. Because we don't know what to expect, About 15 minutes later, I'm sitting in my office, and I'm looking outside. Everyone is hopping in their car. Everyone is heading home. First thing that popped to my mind was, I got 3 kids at home, I cook on a nightly basis, and there's probably not going to be any food. Where do I go get food that doesn't nuke their food? Right? So those are some of the things that you're going to find yourself in that situation that you have to respond quickly to, because it will come last minute, no notice, and you just have to react. And sometimes it's outside of your test plan, but you will have to take those steps.
Okay, thank you, panel. We're just about out of time for our session. We heard a lot of valuable information as far as emergency response and preparedness. And I'd like to thank the panel for all that they've done. And could you give them a hand for all the stuff that they put together?